17 minutes past 8, with Nigel Williams looking after things for Neil Pringle this morning. Now, one story dominating the front pages, the EU deal negotiated by David Cameron, and the headlines are not good. The great delusion, deal or no deal, who do you think you're kidding, Mr. Cameron? Well, later today, David Cameron will face questions from MPs over his package of reforms. Reforms he calls real progress.
On so many things, I was told these things would be impossible. I said I wanted a red card system for national parliaments to block legislation. People said you wouldn't get that. It's there in the document. People said we wouldn't get the idea of people having to wait 4 years before getting in-work benefits in Britain. It's there in the document. So real progress. We said we needed to deliver in 4 key areas. This document shows real progress on that front.
Well, let's get both sides of the argument now. He's going to face some difficulty persuading some of his own Conservative MPs. MPs like the Lewis MP, Maria Caulfield, who says she will now vote to leave the EU. And she joins me along with Nick Herbert, the Arundel and South Downs MP, who backs the In campaign. Good morning to both of you. Ms. Caulfield, first of all, so what do you think of the deal, first of all, please?
It's not enough for me. I mean, it's not going to deliver the change we need. And I was quite prepared to vote to stay in the EU if it did do things like control our borders, if it did help small businesses become more competitive. And the deal on the table is just not going to deliver that.
But being realistic, though, in a negotiation process, you have to compromise, don't you? Is this not a fair compromise?
No, I don't think so, because, we may not even get the limited amount that we've asked for so far. And when I talk to my constituents in Lewis, the biggest issue is that of immigration, and it gives us no control over our borders, where the skills we desperately need we're able to encourage to come to this country, and where skills we have too many of, such as, I talk to local builders who could continuously undercut by Eastern European builders who can live on site and have less overhead. That's not doing much for the ordinary man and woman on the street.
Let's go to Nick Herbert then. Mr. Herbert, your views on the package that Mr. Cameron has agreed so far?
Well, I take a totally different view to Maria, actually. I think that the reforms are what we need to see, because I think they act in the key areas of public concern. So on the migration, I think by addressing this pull factor of paying very substantial in-work benefits straight away to EU migrants who come over here to work, we're talking about thousands of pounds, £6,000 or more, topping up their incomes by 50% or more. So that acts as an unnatural draw for people to come over. I think it's a very smart way to deal with the problem, to tackle those benefits. That's what the deal will do. Crucially, it protects Britain's financial services industry, which is one of our most important industries, employing hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people. That is protected from future regulation, which might have happened because we're outside of the Eurozone. There will now be written down in the treaty that we can't be discriminated against. So if the Eurozone countries like France and Germany want to integrate more deeply, we will be exempt from that, and exempt from ever closer union. So there will be a formal declaration that we're exempt from that. There'll be more power to national parliaments, the kind of things that people like me have wanted to see for a long time. And there will be a big drive to deregulate. So it begins to put into reverse this drive for ever closer integration. And I think what it does for someone like me, who's a Eurosceptic who led the campaign to stop Britain joining the Euro, has concerns about the EU, what it enables me to feel is that we would have the best of both worlds, because we would be in the single market, which is the world's greatest market of 500 million people, which is so good for jobs and business. But we would be outside of the Eurozone. We'd have our own currency. And we would be in this market, but we'd still have our borders, because we'd be outside Schengen. So we can still police the borders. We don't have this passportless travel. And I think that gives us the best of both worlds. And I think we would be very unwise indeed to throw those advantages away for a risky, unknown jump into the dark.
Okay, Mr. Herbert, I'm going to come back to you on the element of the benefit curbs here. I'm just looking at the front page of the Times here, saying that Brussels will actually have the right to reject those benefit curbs. And Ms. Caulfield, maybe you'd like to come in on this as well.
I think it's quite quite insulting to people from European nations to say they're all here to claim benefits. We know that less than 30% of those from European countries actually claim benefits, mostly here to work. And with the move to the living wage, which is coming in the next few months, people will be coming here to work. So change to benefits actually does nothing. And to say that the EU is good for trade, you don't need to be in the EU to trade with Europe. And actually, our relationship with Europe is not to our benefit. We've seen when we joined in 1973, Europe was responsible for 37% of GDP. That's projected to be less than 22%. And we're running a trade deficit with Europe at the moment. And with non-EU countries, we're running a trade surplus. So leaving the EU doesn't mean we stop doing business with Europe, but we need to be looking to the world in order for our businesses, and that's why we've got companies like Hitachi, Toyota, Barclays, JCB, saying either that leaving the EU will make no difference at all, or actually we'll be better off out.
Mr. Herbert, is Mr. Cameron in for a rough ride this afternoon?
No, I don't think so. I mean, just on these couple of points. I mean, the whole point is that we're paying in-work benefits to people, and the difference between our welfare systems is that in Europe, their welfare systems mean that you have to pay in first before you get benefits out. But we give in-work benefits straight away to people. That's why it's unfair, and that's what the situation is designed to address. We know that 40% actually of EU migrants are claiming these in-work benefits, so it's a very substantial draw. So I don't think Maria's right about that, nor is she right about the trade thing. I mean, the whole point is we trade with Europe and the rest of the world. These two things aren't alternatives, but Europe is by a long way our biggest, just let me finish, Maria. Europe is by a long way our biggest export market, and the question is, what would happen if we were no longer in the single market? Would we face tariff barriers? Would we face an arrangement like Norway, which has to negotiate access to the single market? And the price of that is it has to have free movement, the thing that Maria has just criticised. They actually have twice as much migration from the EU as we do, has to accept all the rules with none of the say, and has to pay in. So
Mr. Herbert, I'm going to interrupt you there because I just want to give Ms. Caulfield a chance to rebut you there.
Well, I mean, just to say that, the reason why we're not trading as much with the rest of the world is we can't set up free trade agreements because we're tied in with Europe and we're missing the boat with emerging economies. So I think the EU is actually holding us back. And actually, if the Prime Minister has renegotiated on some of that, that may be enough to convince me to vote to stay.
OK, well, it sounds like it's going to be a lively debate this afternoon. Maria Caulfield, Nick Herbert, thank you very much for joining us on BBC Sussex Breakfast today.